The early 2010s was a golden era for mobile games, ruled by simple yet addicting time killers like Doodle Jump, Angry Birds, and Jetpack Joyride. But a lot of devs saw the new mobile platforms and market as something more, and there was a time where we saw a lot of developers releasing mobile versions of games that were intended to replicate a console experience. Remember the mobile port of Resident Evil 4 and Devil May Cry 4? What about Grand Theft Auto 3 or even Assassin's Creed? Well, it was only a matter of time before someone would have the great idea that a genre known for two people going head to head with each other, needing incredibly precise controls and inputs, would work beautifully on a touchscreen. Today we're going to be taking quick looks at some old mobile fighting games and how they hold up. But you know that we love obscure fighting games on this channel, so to spice it up, we'll be taking a look at some iOS fighting games that Apple won't let you download anymore because they've been delisted. So, time to bust out the old iPad mini and give these a shot. The first game we're going to be taking a look at is the 2012 iOS port of the first Soulcalibur. When Soulcalibur first hit the Dreamcast in 1999, the world was blown away by its graphics, and it's still incredibly gorgeous to this day. And honestly, I remember feeling the same way about the iOS port when it first came out. The fact that this game looked this good on a phone was downright insane to me. I want to clarify that all of the in-game footage on screen in this video doesn't really reflect how well these games really look in real life. And that's due to my capture method, so I apologize. You have most of the first Soulcalibur at your fingertips, with an arcade mode, a survival mode, a pretty fleshed out training mode, and to my surprise, iOS Soulcalibur plays mostly pretty well. I feel like the game runs a tad bit slower than it should, but it's no extreme deal breaker for me. As far as controls go, you have two preset options to choose from, and the ability to customize your own control scheme however you want. But what I appreciate the most is the ability to set your own macro buttons. As you can imagine, hitting two buttons at once isn't particularly easy on a touchscreen, so putting an easy grab macro is very needed for me. While the Soulcalibur series definitely has some intense execution, for the most part, you can get by on fundamentals and game knowledge, and that surprisingly translates very well onto a mobile port, because you're not being asked to string long button strings together. Overall, I genuinely think this is an impressive port, and it's crazy that it came out over 10 years ago, because even if this game came out today, on my phone right now, I'd be impressed with it. When this port launched, it cost $12 before being boosted up to $15, and many people thought that was an insane asking price for the time. But nowadays, that doesn't seem too crazy to me. So, maybe it was just too ahead of its time, or maybe I'm just more used to being ripped off now. The next port I'm looking at was the one I was most interested in while making this video, because I see no one ever talk about it. Did you know there was a 3D remake for Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 that only came out on iOS? That's absolutely incredible to me. A remake of one of the most beloved fighting games of all time exists and is completely lost to time. And guess what? I love it. I really went into this thinking it was going to be a complete janky mess, and that's why it was forgotten. But no, it actually plays well. So Mortal Kombat Advance is still the worst port of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. But don't get it twisted. Even if this game is released on literally any other platform, it's not going to be a Mortal Kombat fan's new favorite version, as it's not one-to-one to the arcade version, and it definitely has some questionable things going on in it. Like how you can seemingly do specials when being grabbed and freak the game out. Now, Mortal Kombat controls don't really translate to, well, anything other than a classic Mortal Kombat button layout control panel. But the iOS remake does its best by giving you different layout options, with one of them being a simple mode, which gives you a special move button while combining both low and high punches and kicks into single buttons. What's even cooler is that the game has secrets to unlock, achievements, and a new mode called Shao Carnage, where you try to see how many times you can hit Shao Kahn under a time limit. And it even has a local 2-player option. Yes, 2 people playing on one touchscreen. Does it work? Hell no. But I greatly respect the effort. Surprisingly, I was shocked to see how much I like this port. All it's missing is a training mode, but for $5 at the time of release, you could have done a lot worse. But can someone smarter than me please rip these models and post them online? The community needs them. Okay, now we got the big boy. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I remember losing it at the idea of this game, thinking about how I'd spend all of my free time at school practicing crazy combos that would totally boost my skill level in the real game. So going back into this iOS port, I misremembered it being based on the 2009 HD re-release of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that came out on the 360 and PS3. So I was completely shocked to open the app again and see that this port was based on the Dreamcast version. That means we got that early 2000s GeoCities website aesthetic, along with the terrible realization that I had to unlock all of the characters. On a fresh boot, the arcade version of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 has half of the cast locked away until a combination of enough time and money had been spent on the machines, as a greedy way of keeping players coming back to the game. The Dreamcast version does something similar, where you earn points while playing the game that you could spend at an in-game shop to buy characters, stages, and colors. As a kid, I remember leaving my Dreamcast on overnight in training mode because it was the easiest way to earn a lot of points. This technique probably led a lot of Dreamcasts to premature hardware failure, but it was worth it. And here I was, over 20 years later, doing the exact same thing on a delisted iOS port of this game because someone had the absolutely baffling idea to just not have all of the characters unlocked from the start. I genuinely left my iPad on for like a week straight before I had enough points to be able to buy all of the characters for the shop. So I can't imagine how they expected the average consumer to spend all of the time necessary when most players are probably just hopping on mobile games for small chunks of time. But anyways, yeah, check it out. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on a touchscreen. As you can imagine, it's less than optimal. You have two different control schemes, one that emulates the arcade of 2 punches, 2 kicks, and 2 assist buttons, and then a more simple control type that combines both light and heavy versions of punches and kicks into a single button, with directional inputs deciding what attack you get, and also having 2 shortcut buttons that you can flick in different directions for different attacks. This thankfully means you get access to one button special moves, but it also breaks the game apart in other ways, because this simple control scheme lets some characters cancel their normals into each other that they can't normally, giving these characters stupid easy infinites. With either regular controls or simple controls, the real root of the problem with this port is that Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is an incredibly hard game. We all know this. I'm no execution god by any means, but genuinely getting basic Magic Series combos down on these controls was harder than doing actual cool stuff on an arcade stick for me. And from all of the games I've talked about, this one definitely seemed the least lenient control-wise. Not to mention, the port also didn't run the best for me. I felt a lot of slowdown at times that isn't present in the Dreamcast version. Again, I'm using an iPad mini, which came out after this port did, so I don't think it's the hardware. And I'm sure porting a game this massive was a huge task, but that of course begs the question, why release the game anyways? Once you get past the novelty, this port is just impossible to enjoy for me. This is the last fighting game I'd want to play on a touchscreen, even just casually. So, those are all the delisted iOS ports I wanted to look at, and surprisingly, I thought they were pretty decent for the most part. But before we end this, I wanted to also take a quick look at the fighting game ports that I was able to grab off the Android Play Store today, with no issue. First is the King of Fighters 2012, which is actually a unique mobile version of the King of Fighters 13. Playing this game for the first time, I was shocked to see how full of content it is. It has 34 characters before DLC, tons of modes, an in-game shop, and even sections for series history and lore for the player to dive into. And as for the gameplay, it's very solid, as it condenses special moves into a single button, along with Rolls and 13's HD mechanic being just a button away. The game feels pretty intuitive because of this, and doing combos is actually pretty fun and feels good, which means I can clickbait you guys into our King of Fighters 13 combo trial video now. What's up, Winco gamers? We are back with another King of Fighters 2012 combo trial video. I know you guys really like these, so last week we really spiced it up, because every single time I dropped a combo, I had to take a shot of hot sauce. But this week, we're gonna make it dangerous, because every single time I drop a combo, I cut off a finger. Alright, let's do it. Okay, so... Anyways, this game is free and pretty fun on the Google Play Store, so check it out. And finally, the next game was the mobile fighting game port I played the most back in the day, Street Fighter 4 Volt. which to my surprise is still purchasable and has even more content that's been added to it that I had no idea about because it's been rebranded into Street Fighter 4 Champion Edition. So I rebought the game, and yeah, I'm still incredibly impressed by it. While it looks super dated, I still think this port is really simplified in a very good way, while also not losing the core feeling of Street Fighter 4. While specials and focus are done by button taps, and there's only one button for both punches and kicks, you can still do a lot of the cool stuff relatively easy, and it even has controller support now. Also, it's the only game I've talked about today that has online play, and I booted it up for some games at 1 in the morning and was surprisingly able to find matches quickly. They were absolutely laggy and not fun, but still, this game apparently does still have some online warriors. Shoutouts to the deli that hit me with this and the nasty lag. While nowhere near the best way to play any of these games, or fighting games in general, I still have a soft spot for this kind of thing, and think they're a great novelty, and I'm sure they were someone's pipeline into really getting into fighting games, and that's invaluable. And I know there are way more mobile fighting games out there, so maybe one day this will be a topic I'll revisit. So if you have any of these lying around, bust them out, they might surprise you. Thanks.